I knew Bryce was trouble the moment he kicked open the war room door like he owned the oxygen. The man was 3 weeks into the company and already walked like a movie villain who thought charisma was a substitute for competence. He strolled in late, Starbucks in one hand, phone in the other, Bluetooth still blinking in his ear, just as the buyer's lead counsel was reviewing the $370 million proposal I'd spent the last 18 months building line by line. He didn't glance at the paperwork, didn't greet anyone, just smirked and said, "Let's keep the techies in the corner, yeah? Grown-ups are talking." A few people laughed, those nervous corporate laughs that sound like survival instincts in a predator's den. I didn't. I just adjusted my binder on the table, the same one he'd later call dead trees. The air was thick with performative confidence. Bryce strutted, postured, made promises the product couldn't keep, and every time he did, the buyer's team exchanged quiet glances with me. I could tell they knew something he didn't. They'd read the fine print. They knew whose name appeared on the core patent, who actually authored the integration stack he was selling with so much swagger. Spoiler, it wasn't him. Still, I sat back, quiet, making notes as he bulldozed through a dozen questions he didn't understand. It's funny. People like him think silence means weakness, when really, it's a countdown. If you're listening to this and you've made it this far, I'll ask just one thing. Tap that subscribe button and drop a like. 97% of people never do, but it's the only thing that keeps stories like this alive and the team running. Trust me, the best part is still coming. Bryce started bragging about cleaning up inefficiencies, his corporate euphemism for firing anyone he couldn't control. He didn't even bother learning names. He called the lead analyst Data Girl and once referred to legal as the fun police. He thought confidence was louder than competence. When the buyers asked about compliance validation, he waved toward me, half smiling. "She's got that part handled, whatever her name was again." Whatever her name was. The same name printed on every certification memo, every compliance signature, every piece of technology that made this whole deal legal. I watched him spin, laugh, charm, and lie, and all I could think was how quickly a man can build a pyre without realizing he's standing on top of it. So I sat there, half in shadow, half in the glow of the projector light, tracing the edge of a single clause in my binder with my thumb. Clause 19B. Original author verification required. It was my quiet insurance policy, the kind nobody ever reads until they're desperate. Bryce didn't even know it existed. I'd buried it years ago, back when the company still cared about integrity. And as his voice filled the room, echoing against the glass walls, I couldn't help but feel a strange calm, because when the fire starts, it's never the loud ones who survive. It's the ones who built the walls. 2 days later, I got an email from Bryce's assistant. Subject line, meeting update. No greeting, no explanation. Just a line that said, Lane won't be needed for the tomorrow's strategy session, the one I'd prepared for all week. I scrolled down, saw my name quietly deleted from the invite chain. Just like that, 3 years of groundwork gone with a click. A few hours later, another one followed. No need for you at the buyer alignment either. VP says focus groups only. Focus groups. I built the architecture they were buying, and now I was being relegated to marketing fodder. Bryce's justification? She's not client-facing. I nearly laughed. I wasn't client-facing. I was the reason they still had clients. I didn't argue. I've learned that in corporate life, the loudest protests are usually the least powerful. Instead, I opened my binder. Yes, my dead trees, and started a new page. Exclusions log. Every meeting, every date, every forward where my access was revoked. I noted the reason, the timestamp, the recipient, because buried in the buyer's review protocol, page 247, subsection 4.2, was a line Bryce never read. Original specification author must confirm final integration readiness. It was the kind of clause people skimmed over. Not me. I wrote it. Later that afternoon, Bryce walked past my desk, holding a latte the size of his ego. He saw my binder, smirked, and said loud enough for half the floor to hear, "You still killing trees for fun? Adorable. We're digital now, Grandma." I didn't look up, just clicked my pen and replied, "Paper remembers what servers forget." That earned me a raised eyebrow and an exaggerated chuckle. He thought he'd won that little exchange, but what I was writing in those pages would outlast his career. When the buyer's team started sending technical queries, the cracks began to show. They asked about encryption inheritance in the compliance module, about the fallback protocols for field deployment. Bryce's answers were generic, slick, empty, like a politician trying to describe how a car engine works. One of the buyers, a senior compliance engineer named Ortiz, stopped mid-call and asked, "Can we have the original author confirm this? The structure doesn't match the prior submission." Bryce laughed, leaned back in his chair, and said, "The author? You're looking at him." Ortiz frowned. I watched from the back of the room as he glanced toward me through the glass wall, like he knew that wasn't true. The more Bryce spoke, the worse it got. His edits to my documentation broke version integrity, and his improvements to the compliance mapping actually invalidated 3 certifications. I could feel the tension building like static. They were heading straight for a disaster only I could prevent. And I wasn't sure yet if I wanted to. I wasn't vindictive by nature, but there's a point when quiet competence becomes an act of defiance. Every exclusion, every insult, every empty order he barked, it all went into that binder. Not out of spite, but out of precision. Because when you hold proof, you don't need revenge. You just need patience. The next explosion came during the midweek review, Bryce's favorite stage, the one with an audience. He thrived on it, swaggering around the conference table like a quarterback who thought charisma could replace competence. The buyers had dialed in remotely, their legal counsel present, ready to go over final deployment protocols. Halfway through, one of them asked about a conditional risk buried in the defense-grade rollout schedule, something I'd flagged 6 months ago as a potential deal-breaker if not handled precisely. Bryce, of course, waved it off. "That's outdated. We streamlined that whole process last week." I glanced at the monitor, at the date on his so-called update. It was a version he'd modified himself. Wrong format, invalid checksum. So I did what I always did. Corrected him gently, factually, without ego. Actually, if we bypass that verification stage, the system will flag during operational readiness. The fallback isn't certified under the compliance framework. Simple, clean, factual. Bryce froze mid-laugh, turned toward me with that grin, the one men like him wear before they embarrass themselves. "Are you questioning me in front of the buyers?" The room went silent. His voice carried across the glass walls. A few people looked down at their notes, others pretended to type. I met his eyes but said nothing. What Bryce didn't notice, what his ego would never allow him to see, was the buyer's lead counsel sitting in the corner, pen hovering, taking quiet notes, every word, every tone. Corporate theater has witnesses, and sometimes they wear $1,000 suits. I didn't argue back. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I turned a page in my binder and slowly circled one line in red ink. Named Integration Verifier must confirm final deployment. The clause was my invisible sword, polished, patient, and perfectly legal. Bryce kept talking, drowning in his own arrogance, while I documented his self-destruction one insult at a time. When the meeting adjourned, people scattered fast, pretending they had somewhere to be. I was gathering my things when one of the buyers, Ortiz again, stopped by my chair. He lowered his voice. "You're the original lead, aren't you?" It wasn't really a question, more like confirmation. I didn't answer, just met his gaze, and he nodded like a man who'd just solved a puzzle. Then he left, and the quiet that followed felt heavier than any argument could have. I sat there alone for a while, staring at the reflection of the conference room lights against the glass wall. My face looked calm, composed, but underneath that stillness was something sharper, no longer self-preservation, but precision. They wanted me invisible? Fine. Let them forget my name for now. Because silence has a memory, and mine was about to become very expensive. The next morning, a quiet email landed in my inbox, subject line: "Follow-up materials, confidentiality maintained." It came from the buyer's legal liaison, a woman named Sarah Whitmore, whose tone was too polite to be casual. "Could you provide any documentation verifying original authorship and certification of compliance stack revisions?" Translation: they'd seen enough red flags to start pulling threads. I stared at the message for a moment, the kind of pause that carries years of work behind it. Then I opened my archive. No panic, no scrambling, just order. I had every document, every filing, every chain of authorship since the first draft of that platform. I attached a compressed packet, design schematics, integration maps, dated approvals, version control records, and the certified compliance memo. My name, L. Mercer, sat neatly on every page that mattered. I even included the notarized sign-off from the defense-grade certification body. The final PDF was only 3 megabytes, but it was heavy with proof. I clicked send and sat back. An hour later, Sarah replied simply, received, appreciated. That was all, but I knew what it meant. Somewhere, a group of lawyers was now walking Bryce's promises against reality, and finding that reality had my signature on it. That afternoon, Bryce was in his usual form, holding court in the open office, bragging loud enough for half the building to hear. We're almost through this. Next step, get the nerds out of the room and let the closers finish it. I kept my eyes on my screen, typing notes for a project he didn't even know existed, a contingency build I'd once created as a failsafe. His voice dripped arrogance. The buyers love me. It's just paperwork now. Behind him, his reflection shimmered in the glass wall, larger than life, while I sat beneath it, silent, deliberate, and absolutely in control. Later that evening, I got another message, this one internal, from our legal department. Subject, clarification request. It was cautious, almost nervous. External counsel has inquired about named integration verifier. Please confirm designation. I read it twice, smiled faintly, and closed the email without replying. Let them dig. The truth didn't need my help anymore. It was written in ink, sealed, and logged in every audit file they'd ever ignored. When the buyer's review team reconvened that week, something in their tone had shifted. They were polite to everyone, but when they looked at me, there was a quiet respect that hadn't been there before. And Bryce, still clueless, didn't notice a thing. He thought they were charmed by his energy, his confidence. He didn't know they'd already found out who really built the system he was selling. He didn't know the storm had already formed, and I was standing right in the calm center of it. Friday morning. The air in the conference suite felt sharp enough to cut glass. This was the final prep before the joint negotiation. Buyers, investors, legal, and our leadership all gathered around a single polished table that smelled like fear and cologne. I'd arrived early, binder in hand, ready to observe from my usual shadowed seat near the end. I wasn't supposed to speak. I was support. At least that's what Bryce had told me. He burst in 10 minutes late, booming laughter spilling through the door before he did. All right, people, let's wrap this circus up and look like we know what we're doing. His phone hit the table with a thud. His jacket followed, and then his eyes landed on me. That smirk again. Cocky, performative, itching for an audience. What's she doing here? He said, pointing at me with his coffee cup. Didn't we decide tech support sits this one out? Before anyone could answer, the buyer's lead counsel, Sarah, spoke evenly. Lane's presence is required under protocol. Bryce chuckled. Protocol, huh? Do you know who I am? He said it loud, too loud, and the room froze like the air had been vacuumed out. Even the projector hum seemed to fade. His question hung there, swagger in a 3-piece suit, ignorance pretending to be confidence. I didn't blink. I didn't move. I just reached into my binder, pulled out my business card, plain, unassuming, and slid it across the table towards Sarah. She picked it up, scanned it, and her posture changed. She passed it to the man seated next to her, the main investor, silver hair, reputation that could silence entire rooms. He adjusted his glasses, read the card, then looked up at Bryce. The pause was surgical. Actually, son, the investor said quietly, voice like a closing door, do you know who she is? No one spoke. No one breathed. Bryce's grin faltered, just slightly, like a man who's suddenly realized he's been playing chess on someone else's board. I could see the confusion flicker behind his eyes, trying to calculate what was happening, trying to recall if he'd missed a memo. The investor turned to Sarah, who nodded once. She's the named verifier, the architect behind the integration stack, her signatures on the filings. The buyer's counsel leaned back, folding her arms. Our entire compliance clearance is tied to her verification. No sign-off, no deal. That was the moment the shift happened. Not with noise, but with gravity. You could feel it in the stillness like static before a storm. Bryce's mouth opened, closed, opened again, but nothing came out that wasn't useless air. The rest of us just sat there, the truth settling in like thunder underfoot. Power had changed hands, quietly, permanently. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just gathered my binder, clicked my pen once, and waited. Because the beauty of control isn't in taking it, it's in already having it when everyone else finally notices. The silence after the investor's words didn't just hang. It tightened. You could almost hear it breathing. Sarah, the buyer's lead counsel, straightened in her seat and said calmly, "We're pausing here. Until Ms. Mercer confirms integration viability, this meeting goes no further." Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried the kind of weight that ends careers. She closed her folder, placed her pen neatly on top, and waited. Bryce blinked. "What? That's ridiculous. She's back office. We don't need her approval for—" The investor cut him off so sharply it felt like the temperature in the room dropped. "She wrote the specifications, Bryce. Her name is on the core filing with the Defense Technology Board. She's not back office. She's the backbone." He leaned forward, voice low but absolute. "If she walks, the deal walks." Bryce laughed nervously, looking around the room for allies who weren't there. "Come on, let's not be dramatic. I've got the leadership credentials here. She's just the—" "Say that again," the investor interrupted, eyes hard. Bryce's mouth opened, then closed. No words came out this time. The lawyer on the buyer's side tapped her screen, projecting the contract onto the wall. In the top right corner of the compliance certificate, one line glowed. Licensing authorization, L. Mercer. The lawyer looked directly at Bryce. Without her signature, the technology is legally non-viable under Section 12 of the licensing agreement. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Someone coughed quietly. Bryce's bravado melted into confusion, then disbelief, then something close to panic. "Wait, how? That can't be right. That's the law," Sarah said simply, "and you should have read it before you started rewriting her specs." I didn't say a word. I just watched him unravel, one denial at a time, the way arrogant men do when they finally meet the consequences of their own shortcuts. My hands stayed still on the table, fingers interlaced, binder closed. He kept looking at me like I was supposed to rescue him, like I'd throw him a rope. But there was no rope left. He'd burned them all weeks ago. The investor rubbed his temples. "We're done here for today. Legal will restructure leadership representation for the next session." His tone carried finality, the kind that doesn't allow for rebuttal. Bryce tried one last time. "This is insane. You can't—" "I can," the investor said, standing. "And I will." He turned to me. "Ms. Mercer, you'll coordinate with counsel on the updated memo. Proceed only with your authorization." I nodded once. That was all it took. Bryce stayed seated, face pale, watching the room empty around him. I stood, gathered my things, and met his stare for exactly 3 seconds. I didn't say a word. Didn't have to. Because silence doesn't need to scream when every signature in the room already belongs to you. By the time the afternoon sun slanted across the glass tower, Bryce's badge was already deactivated. The official line was leadership restructuring, but everyone in the building knew it meant one thing. He was finished. HR called him upstairs around 2. By 2:30, his Slack profile went gray. No announcement, no farewell email, just silence. The same kind he'd mocked me for. The meeting rooms, once full of his voice, felt almost peaceful. I walked past the glass conference walls and caught snippets of whispers. Half disbelief, half relief. "He really thought she was back office?" someone muttered. Another voice answered. "He didn't even know she wrote the damn system." It was strange hearing people suddenly remember your name after pretending not to for years. I didn't hold it against them. Everyone survives differently. At 4, a message came from Executive Operations. "Founder inbound, ETA 5:45, will brief personally." That was rare. The founder hadn't stepped foot in headquarters in months. By the time he arrived, the entire leadership corridor was tense. I was in the review room when he walked in. Tall, older, still sharp around the eyes. The investor gave him a short rundown of what happened, sliding a few pages across the table. The founder scanned them, then looked up at me. "Jesus, that's her?" The investor nodded once. "That's her." He reached out his hand. You kept the place standing, didn't you?" I didn't know what to say, so I told him the truth. Just followed the specs. He laughed softly, the kind of sound that feels more like gratitude than humor. "That binder you carry, it's the reason we're still in business." When the next morning came, the integration roundtable convened without Bryce. No bluster, no interruptions, just quiet focus. The buyer's team had already prepared the final revisions. All that was left was validation. I opened my binder, the same one Bryce called Dead Trees, and placed it in the center of the table. Page after page, we walked through the verification logs, matching every timestamp, every cross-signature, every compliance entry. By the time we reached the final page, Sarah, the buyer's counsel, smiled for the first time in weeks. "Everything aligns. We're ready to sign." No applause, no speeches, just signatures, the kind that end wars and start new ones quietly. As the documents were collected and the meeting dispersed, I packed my binder back into its worn leather sleeve. Someone from the investors team caught my arm and whispered, "You could have buried him publicly. Why didn't you?" I thought about it. The answer was simple. Because I wasn't here to win. I was here to work. Then I left the room, the air behind me still humming with the kind of silence that only follows authority reclaimed. By Monday, the company moved like a machine that had finally shaken loose a bad gear. There were no press releases, no drama, just quiet, methodical correction. Bryce's name disappeared from the internal directory overnight. His office was cleared by facilities before noon. Every trace of him reduced to a cardboard box labeled "Return to Sender." The gold plaque that once gleamed on his door now sat on the reception desk, face down. Security would drop it off later. Meanwhile, I was in Conference 4A with the investor group and 2 members of the board, drafting the new version of the compliance memorandum. This time, there was no shouting, no power games, no one trying to outtalk the person who actually knew what they were doing. Just clarity. Every paragraph restored to its original intent, every technical term corrected, every risk line made whole again. When I reached the signature block, I paused for a moment before writing my name. L. Mercer, Chief Integration Architect. The pen left a steady, deliberate line. Bryce's name, formerly printed beneath mine on every shared document, was gone entirely. The investor leaned over the table, scanning the final version. "You understand this memo now governs the entire platform?" he asked. I nodded. "I wrote it to last," I said. He smiled faintly, like he'd been waiting to hear that. "Good, because the board just voted. We want you to formalize what you've been doing for years." He turned the folder around and slid a single page across the table. The heading read, "Appointment, Chief Product Integrity Officer, Direct Reporting Line, Investor Group." For a moment, I just stared at it. Not because I doubted it, but because it felt inevitable. Like the company had finally caught up to the truth that had always been written in the margins. I signed, closed the folder, and handed it back. The investor extended his hand again, same as the founder had days earlier. "You saved us," he said, without noise. As I walked back through the halls, people looked up from their screens, offering quiet nods, the kind that mean respect without needing words. No one cheered. There was no champagne, no celebration, just the hum of work continuing. And that was exactly how I wanted it. When I passed Bryce's old office, I paused. The blinds were open now, sunlight spilling across the empty desk. The plaque was gone, the drawers clean, only a faint outline of where his nameplate had been lingered on the wall. I could still hear his voice mocking me, calling my binder cute, laughing at dead trees. I almost smiled. That binder now sat in my new office, top shelf, next to the framed compliance memo bearing my signature alone. No revenge, no gloating, just permanence. In a place built on noise, silence had finally signed its name. The deal closed on a Thursday, the kind of day that looked ordinary from the outside. Emails, signatures, muted congratulations. But underneath it all was relief so deep it felt like a heartbeat. The buyers scheduled a small dinner that night at a quiet restaurant downtown. Just the key stakeholders and legal teams. No cameras, no PR spin. Just the people who knew what really happened. When I arrived, the investor stood to greet me, pulling out the chair beside him. "You should sit here," he said, "closest to the people who built the thing." The evening was calm, Understated. No one mentioned Bryce. His name had evaporated from the deal documents as though it had never existed. Instead, the buyers spoke in specifics: deployment milestones, performance metrics, forward strategy. For the first time in months, it felt like real work again: clean, honest, earned. Halfway through the meal, one of the junior lawyers, no older than 26 and still new enough to be nervous around investors, turned toward me. "I'm sorry," he said, cheeks pink, "but who are you really? I mean, you're not exactly on the org chart anymore, but everyone seems to, well, defer." I smiled, not out of arrogance, but from something quieter. Someone who signs her work. He blinked, then nodded, like he'd just been handed a piece of advice he'd remember 10 years from now. As the night wound down, the investor raised his glass, not for a toast, but a simple acknowledgement. "To the people who build the backbone," he said. The table clinked gently. No cheers, no speeches, just respect. When I left, the city lights reflected off the glass buildings like old memories. I walked past headquarters on the way to the parking lot, habit, maybe, and saw through the lobby window that they'd rearranged the display near the entrance. Where the marketing awards used to hang, a new glass case stood, softly lit. Inside it, resting on a black velvet stand, was my binder. The same "Dead Trees" Bryce mocked, now behind museum glass. A small brass plaque beneath it. Original Compliance Architecture, authored by L. Mercer. I stood there for a while, hand against the glass, watching the reflection of my own face merge with the binder's spine. That's all I'd ever wanted. Not fame, not titles, just proof that the work mattered, that the truth stayed intact. When I finally turned to leave, the reflection faded, and all that remained was the glow of the display. My name didn't need to be loud to be known. It just needed to last.